Last week, I got to sit down with the founder of Obsidian, and I just wanted to give a real quick thanks to my patrons and YouTube members. This video is made possible because of your support. If you want to support me, you can do so by going to patreon.com/SaveStatePlus or clicking the join button below to become a YouTube member. Thank you so much for everybody's support. Let's get to the video. Okay, so we're here. You're doing this cool activation in this amazing place for Grounded 2. Why don't you tell me a little bit about why you decided to go with a sequel as opposed to iterating on the original game, and what improvements you were able to make?
I feel like I answered this one a lot. I'm going to mix it up.
All right, let's mix it up.
Give me the mic. Give me the mic. I'll do the journalist thing.
Yeah. All right, all good. So look, when we were finishing up Grounded 1, we were pretty clear that we had like a complete experience. We had accomplished the things we kind of started out to accomplish. We felt really good about that. And we knew that if we wanted to move forward with the franchise and do all the things we really wanted to do, like have a bigger world, have new biomes, have like important community features like buggies, that a better way to do it would be with a sequel than trying to jam stuff into Grounded 1, which might have required things like hard loads or stuff like that, just things that wouldn't be that great. And so,
what's a hard load?
A hard load would mean like go to a loading screen, watch the game load for a while, rather than everything pretty much in Grounded 1 is all like you load into the game and it's all continuous from there. And we think that makes for a really great experience. And so when we were looking at like, hey, these are all the things that we know we want to do with Grounded 2, that we want to do with Grounded as a franchise, as an idea, as a platform, making Grounded 2 just felt like a much better thing for us.
Got it. Marcus, anything to add?
I don't think so. The only other piece that I would say is, people don't always know the touchstones that we had for Grounded 1, and it was less games like Ark and more games like Subnautica and The Forest, which kind of have more of that structure of like a beginning, middle, and end, and have kind of more story elements integrated in. And so that's the other big piece, is there was always a little nugget, like assuming we could get this experiment to work out, that we would want to continue it. And we also had more story to tell, which is what we are like really are leaning into with Grounded 2, and that was the other big piece too. I think in addition to all the features, it's just more of the story that we wanted to add.
Got it. You can hold the mic and I'll hold this one.
Okay.
And then this will work.
Okay.
I think we figured it out.
Okay.
Teamwork. Thank you. So you've been doing this for a long time. What has the technology looked like when you started making games versus now, and like what's that like to you? Is it just surreal, or?
I started working on games in 1995, so yeah, the change for technology for me is pretty wild. We were burning carts, and CDs were a brand new thing when we were making games back in '95. I remember when the PlayStation 1 came out, and it was like the hottest new platform. I think that was 1997, I want to say, and yeah, I mean, I think the most interesting thing for me in that span of time is back then there was always these huge technological like milestones and changes where tech was just like leapfrogging itself over and over and over again, and you would see these generations of games come and go that were based almost entirely on new tech. And like now I feel like, and this was the case back then too, but like more and more games have to be about the content and the gameplay and what's actually there, because the tech doesn't feel like it's advancing as fast as it used to back then. And so I just feel like you see a lot more of that sort of content and gameplay based games, and which is good, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It's all been surreal and wild for me. I feel like I was making like Baldur's Gate 2 like 5 years ago, so it's a little older than that now. Yeah.
What's that experience been like for you? Obviously newer in the industry, I would imagine.
Yeah, not quite back to 1995 for myself. You know, I've been in the industry for quite a bit of time, but not nearly the same as Chris. You know, I 100% agree, at least as like a student of like looking at game development, seeing the progression, loving being a game fan.
But like the game engines, it feels like there's a new update every week. You look at the Unreal update video. I know you're not working in Unreal, but as an example.
Yeah.
Oh, you are for
Yeah,
this
yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, the new Unreal patch. It's like, look at all the crazy stuff you can do now.
Yeah, there's quicker iterations, but I think to Chris's point, they're more incremental and they're more frequent, and so that does cause a change in terms of how you have to adapt, how you're updating a game, especially if you are working in Unreal and you're kind of like working with Epic on those iterations at any given time. But I would just say like one of my favorite things. I'm so happy you asked this question.
Yeah.
Because a cool part about Obsidian is how many generations actually the studio does span, and I always feel super fortunate to get to work with someone like Chris Parker on a game like this, because there is a component of this of like Chris has been a part of making some of my favorite games, including Alpha Protocol, and
Nice.
It's just really, really cool to hear these stories of like how games have come in the past, because also there's so much knowledge and so much of it is different and the technology is new. But to Chris's point about content, that part of the process is really the same, and I love getting to like learn that and kind of have that generational pass down. So I'm really happy that you asked this question. I mean, completely overlaid to Grounded outside of the nostalgia. That would be 3 years. 1995 is 3 years after the events of Grounded 2. But outside of that, it's really just cool. I'm glad you asked that.
The period piece from 1992 is 3 years before I started in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So a lot of personal references to things like the cell phones.
Cell phones and beepers and CDs and stuff like that. Yeah, and that's all. My 20s right there. Yeah.
You have a smaller team on Grounded than some of the other teams at Obsidian. How do you manage to build something of this scope with a tight-knit team like that?
Yeah, so Grounded has always had a smaller team. And in fact, the internal team on Grounded 2 is actually even a little smaller than Grounded 1. And the way that we've made that work is that we've partnered with Eidos Montreal. So Eidos Montreal, really great studio. They put out some amazing stuff. Early on, when we were thinking and talking about Grounded 2, this opportunity to work with them came up. We realized we have a lot of shared DNA in terms of like character progression and story and just high quality games. And they had a bunch of folks that really freaking loved Grounded, and so we were like, "Hey, can we make this work? Can we have a bigger team? Can we figure out how to make this sequel together?" And we've leaned into that, and I think we've been really successful with it. As you can see, we're super excited about what we got for early access, and just looking forward to keeping that going.
Yeah, we had a great baseline to start from with Grounded 1, and that was a big kind of part of the philosophy was, how do we get the most out of what we have, and how do we make sure we also retain what people loved about the first game? But you talked about this a little bit too. The tools and the tech also help a lot to do more with less, in terms of, we tend to focus on relatively vanilla Unreal, which just helps in terms of like being able to expand out and focus in on content as opposed to focus on overly robust or complicated like design or tech. And so I think that tools do help a ton in terms of being able to expand the reach. But I also just think the component of it's more of an advantage of us being a smaller, tighter team, especially when you're making a game preview or an early access game. Mm-hmm. You really have to be a bit more agile and responsive. And sometimes when you have a larger team, it's just harder to coordinate and move everyone to kind of like, oh, we're going to change directions on how we're taking buggies now. It's a lot easier with a smaller, kind of more focused team than it is with a giant team to kind of make those shifts. So for this type of game, I feel like we're at the sweet spot of like the perfect team size to be big enough to really drive that impact, to improve like things like graphical fidelity, to land features that we want like buggies, but also to still be adaptable enough to make a good early access and game preview experience.
What about something like enemy AI or boss AI? How have you improved those aspects of the game in the sequel?
Well, I mean, I think where we start with anything like that is to sort of just look at the previous game and say like, hey, where was our AI? What do critics of the game and what do the community think about it? What are they happy with? What don't they like? And you just kind of break down those things and sort of look at like, we think, our biggest wins are going to come, for something like combat. We knew we wanted to make combat better. Where can we find some wins in here that are going to feel great, are not going to require re-engineering everything in the universe. And for us, it was like, hey, we think we can improve basic AI. We can add some functionality, like having bigger buggies, bigger insects actually like block player attacks, adding in new options for the player like dashing, creating a little bit more of a coordinated dance between your enemies and yourself in terms of light attacks being quick and heavy attacks breaking blocks, and you didn't necessarily dodge out of the way of like special attacks that enemies might have, and then just sort of tying that all together with AI. In terms of bosses, man, that's hard. You always want to make bosses super cool, super big. You want to make them really, really challenging, especially in a survival game. And I think you just look at them and say like, hey, this boss, we want to accomplish, X, Y, and Z. How do we pull this off in this arena or this environment when we expect the player to be this powerful? And man, that is a wishy-washy answer, but like, you just kind of tackle it problem by problem.
Yeah, combat is definitely the place that you'll see kind of an iteration on it, and like the most apparent, not as much under the hood kind of evolution is what Chris said around the way creatures interact in combat in particular, where we kind of call it like our combat dance 2.0, just to create more of a robust kind of rock, paper, scissors evolution of combat. Survival games don't always have like combat isn't in the forefront of them, but we certainly wanted to, when we're moving to a sequel, make that, add some depth to combat, kind of mature that a little bit more. And again, something as simple as a block, it does change the way combat feels moment to moment to make it a little more interesting, a little more, and so when you're killing a bunch of creatures throughout the course of the game, that doesn't get too stale or too boring over time.
Well, and also I think we have the advantage of buggies in this. And so adding buggies into the combat mix actually also changes a ton of stuff. So you can fight while you're mounted on a buggy. You can have your buggy sort of like be alongside you, taking with you as like a companion character. So that also adds a lot of depth and like different options for combat. And it also creates a lot of chaos, which is super fun.
As a studio, how do you balance and prioritize tasks and just assignments across 3 different games you're developing concurrently? You have Grounded 2, you have Outer Worlds, you had Avowed this year. Mm-hmm. I'm probably forgetting something else that's like unannounced.
No, that's it. Right, but that's all. That's enough. I think that's enough.
So how do you balance all of that at Obsidian?
So Obsidian's always been a multi-project studio, and so one very basic way is we have multiple teams that are working on it. So there's 3 different teams kind of working across all 3 of those different projects, and that kind of helps allow making sure there's focus. Now, I will just say there are some shared teams like our communications team that our partners at Xbox who maybe work across multiple of our games. And for that one, I have to ask them like how we always balance that stuff all out. But on the development side, it really does come down to being a multi-project studio. We always feel like that's really helpful too, because, you learn so much for every game that you ship. And that learning can kind of get passed along to the next game. This is something like really small, but the tech that we built in Grounded 1 from photo mode actually was used and integrated into Avowed to be the baseline for Avowed's photo mode. So us having multiple teams, you can really like share and grow and like kind of learn from each other, and going through that process of like the entire development process together, it actually is super helpful in terms of like, it's almost like a compounding effect of it allows us to be able to make more games because we are shipping, often enough that we've learned that news from another team.
So how important do you see that sort of collaboration and, retaining the people who pass along that knowledge?
Oh, it's super important to retain people and keep people. And I think, one benefit that having multiple teams that we have is we can actually shift people between teams also. Mm-hmm. So as we finished up Avowed earlier in the year, that gives us the opportunity to maybe move some people on to help with polish and finishing out on the Outer Worlds too. Again, Obsidian has always been a multi-project studio, like for that reason, because we knew going into founding the studio that like, hey, we wanted to be able to have some flexibility amongst teams and be able to have, if you have extremely talented animators on one team, that you want to be able to help mentor animators on a different team, sort of shift those resources around, or you can have some act as principals for the other ones. And all those things are, I think, strengths of the studio. We also have an entire core tech group that I don't want to leave out. Obsidian has spent over 15 years building a system of core tech and tools that we use for things like dialogue, voiceover, quest structure, all of our like journal entries, localization. All of these things are all wrapped underneath this Obsidian tools that our core tech has developed that we can then bolt onto an engine like Unreal or something like that. And so having that, especially for our bigger, very role-playing focused games, helps us, I think, always have a leg up when we start on a new thing or when we're trying to close down a project.
And not to belabor this point, but you talked about retention. Having multiple projects also helps with that a bit too. Just for you can get tired of working on the same thing for years at a time, and having another project where I've been working on a sci-fi game for a while, maybe I'll jump to a fantasy one, or maybe I'll try out something like Grounded. It just helps keep you creatively energized, and I think that it's a nice thing to like help people when they be able to shift around.
You brought up tech, so what's one piece of tech in the original Grounded that was revolutionized in Grounded 2 or improved in Grounded 2? Or what did you want to talk about within the tech sector that you saw as a big win?
Yeah, so the easiest thing to talk about in terms of like tech improvements from Grounded 1 to Grounded 2 is just going from Unreal Engine 4 to Unreal Engine 5.
Yep.
That comes with just so many like out-of-the-box benefits from the Lumen lighting that comes with Unreal 5 to Nanite, a bunch of other systems that are in Unreal 5, just better partitioning and streaming of the world. There's just a sort of laundry list of things that we get with Unreal 5. And as soon as we went from 4 to 5, we were able to start realizing a lot of those improvements. And I think, and it's probably not immediately evident. Like, it's not to me, I guess probably because I see it all the time. But like, to me, Grounded 2 looks a lot like Grounded 1. If you actually put them side by side, they don't really look that much alike. Like, Grounded 2 actually looks like a lot. Just the lighting is prettier, the world is prettier. There's been a lot of improvements. We've touched all of the creatures to also improve how they all look and make them all look better. They've all gotten a little glow up, a little level up. So a lot of that really is just from tech. The other thing, which is not new tech, but I think is the most interesting thing that we've done, is adding buggies. Like,
You may have said that once or twice.
may have said it once or twice, but like, that was feature number one that we started like at the very beginning. As soon as we started Grounded 2, we're like, we gotta have buggies, and we gotta figure out how to like integrate them across the board in terms of being able not just to ride them, but fight with me, harvest, carry stuff, other whatever else I could do, place blueprints and then build, have them haul for me. Like, how do we make these not just a mount that I ride around the world, but something that's like a real part of my experience? And so like, that was non-trivial. It took us a long time to actually get that to like just a base level where we're like, hey, you know what, just running around on these feels pretty good, to then like more and more and more features, to now where it's like we're absolutely ready going into early access / game preview to say, okay, community, we think these are feeling pretty good. Now you let us know what you think.
I know you probably want to move on, but one other piece of tech that I can't
Tell me more about the buggy.
I can't shy away from it, and I won't. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about buggies, and if we could say, we should have a nickel for buggies and community, because we say that like a million times over. But shared world is another piece of tech that I think is really, really important. And you also talked about how do we make this with a smaller team. Shared world's really, really helpful with that, because then we don't have to worry about a lot of the complexities that come with online dedicated server kind of infrastructure. And so that was something that's just a really cool story and an evolution for me of, the Undead Labs team actually started kind of with a version of this tech, and we inherited it in Grounded 1 and kind of like built it out a little bit more and actually shipped with it, and then kind of like gave it back. And there was kind of a collaboration across XGS for this one as well. And we've continued to iterate on kind of shared worlds in terms of it being a way to still be peer-to-peer, but function, effectively like one shared cloud save, where you can kind of go, while you're offline, I can jump in and still play. And I think that's kind of like a magical moment where it blends kind of the best of both worlds in terms of it being like giving you that experience, still being able to play not always online with your friends, but asynchronously, but not having, again, a lot of the complexities or the things that come with things like dedicated servers. So shared worlds is another piece of tech that I think is really special to Grounded, and it also enables us to have this co-op multiplayer experience with a tighter team.
I don't mean to get too controversial or anything, but the whole stop killing games movement, you brought up peer-to-peer versus shared world. What happens with Grounded 1 if the servers ever go offline? Does it just disappear? And how do you feel about that outcome?
So there's no real servers based for Grounded 1, so it kind of circumvents that problem. I mean, I'm not going to wade into the waters of that, but I will just say this about like our perspective on just games in general is we try to preserve our games for generations to come. I just got done telling you how like I love games. I'm a student of the game, so to speak. And so like, you know, with things like we just updated Pillars, a 10-year-old game back in February.
Heck yeah.
We continued to update Grounded up until April. And so it's just something that's important to us. I think more broadly it's important to Xbox in terms of the preservation of games, but that's something like that's not why we did shared worlds, but it certainly is a benefit that it makes that easier to kind of keep your favorite game, regardless if you wanted to keep playing Grounded 1 as well.
Got it. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, this isn't like a gotcha or anything like that. I'm genuinely curious because you guys work in this space. You've made games since the 90s, and you know, you're newer in the space than the 90s, but I think we all care about that aspect of it. Like I want to go back and play New Vegas, and I can do that on my 360 and load up my save as long as the tech doesn't physically degrade to the point of not being used anymore. So it is sort of like in the zeitgeist right now. Did you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. Like, I wanted to do a playthrough on AP, and so I dug out my PS3, and I was like, I don't know if this thing's still going to work, you know? And it did, and I was super excited about being able to check that out again, because I hadn't played the game in, 15 years or something like that. So, yeah, I agree. Like, the whole idea of being able to go back into sort of back catalogs and play games, I think is super worthwhile. And I'm not precious about that though. Like I also like remasters, and I like when games just get updated to work on a new platform, even if it is just in a compatibility mode. Like I think that's fine with me, and I'm not precious about that. But a lot of times I want to go back and play some old game because I just love it, and I appreciate that.
I hear you. Virtuos did a great job on the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster too. Last one. Sorry.
Because I'm moving you on to another one.
Got it. The last one was actually a silly one.
Yeah.
What was your favorite or funniest bug that you encountered in this game about bugs?
So one of the ones we actually put in the developer direct that we did, but there's a lot of times for whatever reason.
Oh, I know what
faces show up on the back of your head instead of on the front, and it's both terrifying and hilarious at the same time. And so I don't know that there's a lot of bugs with the bugs that happen, but that one is like the creepiest. Also, sometimes depending on what happens of how you hit or clip into a wall, if you're in third person or first person, it'll like jump you in and you can see inside of your face, which is again kind of horrific. Those ones are my favorite because they're kind of creepy, and I almost like want to make something that allows that to be like a mode. But that's probably my favorite. I think I just think it's kind of funny.
Good luck getting that past cert.
That's true. Yeah. That's fair.
That's early access. So we can get away. We can get away with a few things. I was going to use that one, but I'll use a different one that just came up recently. Was that when you were shooting arrows at insects? Sometimes, for some reason, the arrow would just like blow up to 100 times its normal size. So you're just like plunk, 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 and it'll be like, wham! These gigantic sticks start sticking out of the creature and flipping all over the place. And it just looked completely ridiculous. And actually, it's like, why is there grass sticking out of the creature? And it's like, well, that's not grass. That's an arrow. All right. So I think we have that one fixed. I don't know. Maybe not.
This will be the best part. I can't wait for that. Like the bugs are kind of fun. That's kind of the charm.
Yeah. And there's still some in there that are out there to be found by the community, not intentionally, but they're still there, and we know it. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Obsidian's had no bugs in any of their other games.
We have improved along with the technology over the years.
Yeah. Continuously improved from Coder 2 to Neverwinter Nights to Fallout New Vegas to AP, which were all quite buggy, into eventually getting to like Pillars of Eternity 2, where we're finally like, all right, we've shipped a game with almost no bugs. This feels really, really good. And the same with Outer Worlds 2 and other more recent ships where we've been like, yep, okay, we're finally on this now.
All right, well, I'm being told to wrap it up. Chris, Thank you, Marcus. Thank you. I'm so sorry. This was great. It was really great getting to chat with you both.
Yeah.
Same. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed getting to play today. If
Been
you
doing
did.
this 15 years, still get nervous and trip over my outros.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hey, we're at the midway point. We're going to transition over to the other video. But if you're watching YouTube or Patreon, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. And please continue considering to support on Patreon. You can do so at patreon.com/SafeStatePlus or by clicking the join button. Thank you so much to the members. Now, back to the video. So I have a few questions for you about Grounded 2. What's your favorite new feature in Grounded 2?
I mean, I think for me, buggies is the obvious answer, but I think I'll go one step.
No one's allowed to say buggies.
I know, right?
Come on.
right.
No more buggies. Why is everybody so hyped about buggies? I'm just going to interrupt you because they were really hype about it. And why is that so exciting to y'all?
Yeah, I think it was sort of the thing where obviously it was the top requested community feature, but then we went through a lot of iteration, just kind of figuring out where we want to start with buggies, and kind of looking at other games that have mounts or other games that have kind of creature collection, and kind of realizing we were in a unique space where we were doing a lot of different stuff. There wasn't a really good analog for it, and then having that as a foundation, being excited to see where it goes from here too. But yeah, my answer, my weird slant on buggies being my favorite feature has got to be the way it kind of shapes combat as well. As someone that grinds a lot in single player, I like being able to get off my buggy and have it take some of the aggro so I can kind of hop and use my ranged attacks more and stuff like that, shift the playstyles. So that's my loophole buggy answer for you.
And Eric, you must have been like, oh, I can bring this huge W back to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. As a player myself, the buggy just feels really good. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to get off it. It's just that's how good the buggy is, especially with how big the park is compared to the backyard. Like the buggy is like super helpful when it comes traversing like large tracts of, miniature land to just move across and zoom around the park pretty easily.
In terms of community feedback, how do you parse that, take something of value from it, and then bring it to implementation?
It is a lot of manual work. So we utilize our Discord server for Grounded, and we have a suggestion bot where the community themselves can submit their own suggestion, and they could chat amongst themselves and see what's a good idea before submitting. And then there's a voting process where if people think it's a good idea, they upvote the suggestion. And when it hits a certain threshold, we'll say for Grounded 1, we use 35 upvotes to be considered to be a threshold to add it to my spreadsheet. And I go through the comments and the suggestions and kind of put on a spreadsheet, and then we have a weekly meeting with a QA and producers and game directors, and we go line by line action and like here's what the communities want, and kind of distill that information into something that's actionable and what works best for the game.
Miles, what's something that came across your desk in terms of community want, and you're like, we want to do that, but we can't, and why? Like maybe you could dive into that.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think the best one to go off of. I think one big piece that you'll often bring up is sort of man-made structures. We've heard the notes from folks about wanting to go in the house, right? That's a classic. And so I think can't right now, but planning to is the thought of, hey, we have the park now. It's got a lot more man-made structures by nature of its kind of basic theme. So looking at what we have to start off with, like the ice cream cart's a great example. Seeing what people like or don't like about it, and kind of wanted to bring that wish list item kind of to fruition based on that feedback, but with the runway of filling out the park across early access.
One second, I had a few questions here from the community also. Co-op's kind of a big deal. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you see that positively impacting community playtime, and just like, are people going to be really happy about that? I imagine the answer is yes.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Especially with Grounded 1, co-op was such a big thing. Especially, we came out during the pandemic, so we've actually got a lot of support tickets or emails from families like, hey, thank you for this game. I've never been able to bond with my kids before until Grounded, and now we play the game every day. And so it's really like very wholesome to hear these like families coming together just because we made a game, and it's like really special. It's like something we didn't really consider or think of until people told us about it. It was super nice. So I think for Grounded 2, that lineage will keep going forward for families who played the first game together can now move on to Grounded 2 and play together again.
Miles, what do you think about the world in terms of new biomes and such? Can you share any details about new areas players can find in this world?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, kind of one of my previous answers, like balancing the man-made structures of the park versus the organic elements of it that are kind of core to survival. I think a big piece there is like wanting to make sure we're not kind of over-servicing one or the other. We've got this sort of pine tree root area that's like super tangled and puzzly and kind of like a labyrinth to a certain extent. I think it was a fun one in terms of, not being quite as transformative, being a little more like literal in terms of like, you've probably looked at a tree with gnarly roots and wondered like, what goes down there, So that's a fun one. Ice Cream Cart obviously has been another one of those community W's as well for having a kind of a cold biome finally. And then beyond that, just sort of like, playing with the space that we've kind of touched on in Grounded 1, with like, berry bushes and stuff like that too. So
how do you build on the storytelling given the time period and, we're experiencing a little bit new area? How do you build upon the lore of this world in Grounded 2?
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite parts to talk about. The narrative team at IDOS like really digs into each kind of part of the character and the story structure, and had some great new characters and great growth on existing characters. But I think that roots from basically this is 2 years later. Everything happened in Grounded 1 with Ominent as public knowledge. Like the shrinking technology, the fact that they were doing this to these teens, and so where do you go from there as a company? How does the world react to it? And Sloan Beaumont, our new spokesperson for Ominent, is a great area where we're like, let's see how different this would work out. So I think having it go from this place where no one knows you're shrunken and out there fending for your life to being in a world where that is a possibility in the average person's mind really opened up some really cool possibilities as well.
How many times have you seen Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Eric?
Man,
I bet nobody's ever asked.
No one's ever asked. I can't put it, because as when we're kids, we tend to watch the same thing like 100 times. And, so I grew up in the 90s watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I can't put a number on it, but probably 40. So
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was being facetious, but that's great. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of inspiration and like at least the idea of shrinking down and being smaller and then interacting with this stuff. People make that correlation instantly. Anybody who's thinking about that, what do you say to them when you are trying to get them to try out this and set it apart from that old school movie from when I was a kid?
Yeah, I think it's just, I think it's one of those concepts that's just really digestible, even if you don't have that sort of, that background of like, oh, here's a good, easy, like, shortcut of like, it's like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's this sort of thought of like, what's a really mundane thing that we think nothing of or think is boring that is just terrifying and life-threatening when you're that size. So I think whenever we can, kind of thinking in that sense of like, finding something that's almost cute or so simple and then making it this nightmare. And I think that people, when you're a kid or an adult and you're bored waiting in line or whatever, you look down at like the crack in the sidewalk and you go like, what's going on down there? Like I think there's a certain like basic fascination and curiosity that this kind of taps into as well.
What is it about Grounded just in general that you think has really captured the imagination of players? Because it exploded in popularity. It's a hugely popular game. What do you think it is about Grounded that has really resonated with people? We can start with either of you. Miles, maybe?
If you want, yeah, sure. I think, like I said, there's an element to it of survival games were kind of impenetrable. I think for a lot of people, this was their first survival game. But it doesn't betray the genre in terms of taking weird shortcuts. Like I said, there's still this sort of organic element of like harvesting resources, building stuff, surviving on a daily basis. And I think that wrinkle felt new to a lot of people. I think the sort of core fantasy of being small resonated with a lot of people. And I think, to Eric's point earlier, like the co-op part of it, having an opportunity to play with family or friends, especially during the pandemic when it first launched, all of that just became this sort of fresh experience for people. Yeah, I'm sure Eric, if you want to elaborate.
I mean,
what do you think?
To add to that, I think really it really came down to like us as developers were incredibly passionate about the game and wanted to make a really good game, and alongside with building that game with the community, with their feedback, and having kind of that transparent communications of, hey, we hear you, we hear your feedback, your suggestions, and then just letting them know that like the things that they want, we're adding to the game, and just how community driven this game is. I think it really was a key to success, part of its success.
What are some of the biggest lessons you learned from Grounded 1?
Oh man, so the community.
I
can go Miles first this time.
Yeah, sure.
You got one, Miles?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm thinking, in progress here. I think, just sort of not being overly precious with design. That core team's kind of mindset and philosophy was, design should come from all places, and I think that lends itself really nicely into being receptive to community feedback. Right? There's less of a sort of strict line around it. Being flexible. Staying on top of stuff, not being kind of looking at the project in a different way than sort of the strict documentation, like here's how things work. I think that was something that they kind of came in with that gave them a step up, and kind of served them well throughout the rest of early access as well.
Any thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I think sometimes as developers we kind of silo ourselves in our work and not look at the bigger picture. And I think one of the big lessons from Grounded, because of working with the community so closely, is like kind of taking a step back and like, what do I want out of this game as a player, not just as a developer? And I think that was a good like pillar of how we developed the game.
Do you have any nods in Grounded 2 to anything that the community helped create in terms of the story within the game that is created within these types of worlds?
Okay.
I said nothing that we want to give away,
but there is stuff.
Oh yeah, there's stuff there, and there's stuff waiting in the wings. I think that's a core chunk of it, right? Like buggies is the most literal thing in terms of it being a feature people wanted, but yeah, playing with that across narrative and systems, and just Easter eggs along the way too. Like like all the feedback that has been kind of bouncing around. We wanted to make sure we at least played with it somewhat. So not super specific, but it's always at the forefront of our minds. I'll put it that way.
What's a contribution that maybe you made, Eric, that you're super proud to see implemented in the game?
Oh man, there was one thing specifically, and I don't. It's on the tip of my tongue, but
it's not buggies, is it?
Well, buggies. So in Grounded 1, I have the spreadsheet of all the suggestions we collected from the first game, and there's well over 900 suggestions on that, and then we went through a good chunk of those. So just having that kind of foundation of already knowing what the players wanted from Grounded 1 that we could add to Grounded 2, like buggies as an example, and particularly the insects. In Grounded 1, we had this single snail shell that you couldn't do anything with. And so the community was like, oh, why can't we have an actual snail, or why can't we have gear crafted from the snail? But so we have a lot of insects that they wanted from Grounded 1 now in Grounded 2.
That's cool. You have any thoughts, Miles?
Yeah, I think the snail was a great sort of kind of that last question of like kind of nods to the community, where it's like, yes, this is a cool place to explore, but also, something that people have been asking for a while. So we're satisfied to like, put the period at the end of that sentence.
What's that process like for you, taking something like that from the community and getting it implemented? Like, what is it like? Obviously, he brings a suggestion to you, and then you're like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get this into the game?
Yeah, no, totally. I think a part of that is sort of the almost like relay race of feedback versus development. Working on Grounded 2 very much under wraps until we announced, at the showcase. We had to do a lot of, getting the ball rolling on stuff without feedback from the community right away. So it's kind of like, let's get something that is mature enough that people can sink their teeth into it and kind of give feedback on it, know what they like about it, know what they don't like about it, and then we'll iterate from there. And so it's kind of like, again, like a relay race where we get it handed back to us eventually, of like, all right, so they want this feature in here. How do we address this in a way that, solves the problem or, helps answer the desire someone has, but then give them a little something extra to kind of then start giving us the next round of feedback on, right? So it's always trying to stay one step ahead of the community and wanting them to stay one step ahead of us as well. So we can kind of like constantly keep that momentum going, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. What's something I didn't ask about that you were excited to talk about today?
Oh, man. I think, I think we hit on a little bit with narrative, but, coming out 2 years later in universe, and kind of to Eric's point about families playing this game together, a big focus from our creative director at IDOS, Justin, has been kind of looking at the series and being like, hey, this resonated with a lot of young people in 2020 when it came out, or 2022 when it was in 1.0. And they're a few years older as well, so kind of wanting to kind of age up the tone, or age it up with those players, not too far, not like that same gap of time, but make sure that they can find new things and something that they really enjoyed once. So we hope that comes across as well.
That's cool. Eric, anything I should have asked about that you wish you could have talked about today?
I think I'm excited for players to check out the archetype system.
Yeah.
Where in Grounded 1 there was a lot of ways to have builds, but there was no formal way of I'm going to be the tank, I'm going to be the ranger type, I'm going to be the sneaky rogue. So I think it's cool that we're going to allow that, expand upon that more in depth with the different armor and gear types, and especially with the archetypes. And I'm excited to see people mixing and matching from the gears and see what kind of crazy builds they have.
Have you seen anything crazy yet, in testing?
I haven't yet personally, but I've heard from talking to the creators here at the event that the ambush build is very strong. So
That's really exciting. What about you? You see anything crazy in QA?
I think just the staffs and what people can do with them in terms of stacking status effects and stuff like that has been really cool, because that comes from making those kind of feel better in general, having a sort of level of almost magnetism to your shots, where if you line up your shot with your stave and you hit it, it should feel like it goes to the right place. So seeing people really lean into status effects, which we've also kind of expanded on as well, has been cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the stuff get utterly broken once we're kind of up to full speed.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. That's all I have for you today, but this was great. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Likewise. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
A huge thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. Thank you so very much. A huge thank you to the members who support Chris, Freddy, Philaroni, Spingater, and Aries EMS. Thank you, thank you. It means the world. You can support at patreon.com/SaveStatePlus to see more content like this. Your support means the world. You can also become a member here on YouTube. Now, I'm going to get out of here, but before I go, check out my last interview, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.